All right, welcome to our Yoga Sutras video. So this module is going to be a very general overview of the Yoga Sutras. The Yoga Sutras is the guidebook of yoga. It is 4 chapters, 196 verses. We will only be going over the first chapter. And as I said, we're going to be going over in a general view and not going super into depth. In a 200-hour training, my 200-hour training that I run, we spend 30 hours working on the Yoga Sutras and the philosophy that it holds and how it applies into practice. But for these purposes, we're looking at the fitness setting. We're looking at providing an introduction to the people that come into the classroom. So we do want to have some of this information to offer and sprinkle throughout our classes. Make sure that you're taking some notes. Also make sure that you have your PDF from Jessica Char that I sent along with this section of videos. This PDF you're going to use alongside with the video. We're going to go over sections of several sutras, and then I'll ask you to pause the video and read those sutras in Jessica Char, because the Yoga Sutras has many, many translations. They're written in the Sanskrit language. So the original sutras are a couple thousand years old, and the translations are by those yogis and gurus who have dedicated their lives to the practice, and they have written their understandings and translations of each of those sutras. So Jessica Char is one that I use his book in the 200-hour training. And at the very end of this book, The Heart of Yoga, he has all of his translations. So I've shared that first chapter of the sutras with you. So have that ready, have your manual ready, and let's take a look at those sutras. All right, so chapter 1 has 51 sutras. And the first one is really more of an invitation and a celebration. You have arrived. Now yoga begins. And even more so, this idea that other work had to be done before people were ready to show up to dive into a yoga practice. So something brought the people who are coming to your yoga class through that door. Something brought you to this training. Now yoga begins. And before we move on to Sutra 1-2, I want to clarify states of mind. States of mind that the Yoga Sutras say are natural for all of us to have at some point or another. So let's take a look at what those 5 states of mind are. So you'll see, you hold your hand up. There's 5 states of mind, 1 for each finger. We're going to start at the teeny tiny one. This is Kshipta. This is the disturbed mind. And you can take it all the way over to the end of the spectrum and think about someone with mental health issues, someone who may be paranoid. You can think of some diagnoses that might fit in this disturbed mind, but it doesn't have to be quite as sinister or uncommon, really. A disturbed mind just means we can't be in the moment. We are too distracted. We are too much into, whether it is frustration, anger, fear, that we can't really be present with what's going on. The mind is always either going back into ruminating about something, or or we're forward thinking and freaking out about the future or things that we have to do. We're too busy. So like all of these things where we are just not able to like sit in the moment and be present with the moment would be considered a disturbed mind. Now, Muda has a similar disconnection to being in the present moment, but this is more of a heaviness. So this would be something you could liken to the idea of somebody feeling depressed, not feeling a lot of motivation, not able to get out of bed, or feeling just unenergized about everything. And that has a heaviness on the mind too. So instead of it being like, in disturbed mind, we're thinking about all of these things, whether it's anxiety or frustration, the dull mind is more kind of like under a wet blanket. The thoughts are super slow, they're not energized, and again, we're stuck in some place other than being in the present moment. So vikshipta is our third one. This is distracted mind, and this is actually where most of us are most of the time. Distracted mind just means that yes, we have times when we can be engaged, fully engrossed in what it is we're doing in a moment, or conversation with someone, or walking through nature and having these moments, those moments of when you're like taken by the sight of the sunset, or just in those moments where you're totally in connection with the space, with the present moment. But then we have our minds jumping in and taking us to our to-do lists, or thinking about things we want in the future, or ruminating about something in the past, or even just, taking something through your mind, and then we're back in the moment. And then we're thinking about something ahead, and then we're back in the moment. So that's a distracted mind. And that's really where a lot of us are. Now, ekagra, one-pointed mind, this is going to be those moments of time when you are fully engrossed in something. And some people can access this if they are doing some kind of art or craft. Some people access it when they're listening to music, but it's this moment of everything else going away, and you are fully focused on this one thing, whether it's an action, whether it's something that is connecting to your senses in some way. That is one-pointed, and we generally don't stay there all the time. We can have practices of being able, many of us have used self-help books and other things like that, where practicing mindfulness and being present with the moment is something that we're working towards. And so the more you are practicing it, the more you can access this one-pointed. But life goes on, we get back into vikshipta, right? And then nirodha, this is like the state of where we are able to bring ourselves to that one-pointed, calm, stable mind, seeing clearly, because we've practiced so much in that one-pointed focus. All right, so just thinking about that, these 5 states of mind, and where you might find yourself at different times, maybe it's some time when you're like driving and you're having a lot of people cutting you off and the roads are crazy and you're starting to get angry. Like, stop and think about, like, where's my mind right now? So that is a foundation of what I would like us to build the next few sutras on. So moving on to Sutra 1, 2. All right, Sutra, Chapter 1, Sutra 2, Yoga is the control of the modifications of the mind field. So we talked about all of those states of mind. When we talk about the modifications of the mind field, what we're talking about is all of the filters, all of the crap, all the baggage that we bring in to any situation that we come into. And because of our baggage, of our experiences, of our, life and the way we've responded and the way the people around us have responded to us, we have knee-jerk reactions, we have filters over the experiences that we have. And we put those filters right over top. That's what we see when we're having an interaction with somebody. So maybe you had someone who was just really rude to you right before you walked into a room, and then you see someone else and they say something to you, and you're feeling like, why is everybody being rude to me? Whereas that wasn't their intention at all. It could have been that they were just asking a question. But because we're in certain states of mind, we have these filters, we put it on the situation. So we don't always see them clearly. And this idea that ignorance creates the filter, ignorance is just unawareness. It's just not being aware of those filters. And if we're not aware of them, then we think that how we are perceiving it is the truth, and it's not always so. So yoga is a practice that actually helps us become more aware of those filters and to stop putting them over top of the situations that we're in. So that is what we mean by yoga, is the control of the modifications of the mind field. So let's take a look at 1-3. All right, Sutra 1-3. Then the seer abides in itself, resting in its own true nature, which is called self-realization. And essentially what this means is, once all of the crap goes away, you are seeing things as they truly are. You're not adding anything to it. You're in the moment, you're seeing truly what it is. And so you're able to connect to everything in this authentic way. And I love this poem or saying here. It says, the wave forgets the truth that it is ocean, thinking itself to be the grand shape which it is temporarily taken. For a while, it takes on the form of wave. Finally, it remembers its true form of ocean. The two coexist, though one is true and the other, though beautiful, is only relatively true. So too, we humans forget our true nature, but through yoga can remember. So after reading that, I'm going to revisit this idea of 1-3, resting in our own true nature. We see ourselves so separately, and this idea that we are all part of the ocean. And yes, we all take on our roles throughout the day and in our lives, and we feel like we are over here, look at me, a grand wave. But really, when it all comes down to it, we are all this great ocean. And when we remove all those filters, we can interact with others and life from that place of feeling that connection. All right, and 1-4 just says, and other times we're stuck in the filters. So again, like I was just bringing in the ocean idea of all of us being connected through this, this greater thing that is the ocean, yet we still kind of, as the waves take on these identities and shapes, just like in this diagram, it shows here's a pool of melted chocolate. And then life comes around, it has demands, we're expected to do things and play certain roles. Here come the molds, we pour the chocolate into the mold, and here we are playing our roles individually, doing our thing, bumping into each other, but with the heat of our practice, we can bring it back to this formless melted chocolate, forgetting all of these roles and really recognizing that idea that we're all connected from the same place. So I would like for you to pause the video here and just read those first 4 sutras in the Heart of Yoga from Jessica Char. You've got the PDF of that. Just read those first 4, and then we will continue on. Okay, so in the spirit of this theme assignment that you'll have, I want to offer some tidbits for you to think about. So we're just going to look at that section 1.1 through 1.4. Now, yoga begins. Yoga is the control of the mind field. When we are there, we feel this true, authentic connection. We see things clearly, and other times, not so much. So that's the first 4 in a nutshell. So perhaps your theme would like to focus on those first 4 and think about how you might present that in an intention through the class. So at the beginning, maybe we've done a little bit of movement and we can sit back into child's pose. Okay. Maybe we're just starting with the centering of the breath, and we have everyone in their easy sitting position, and their eyes are closed, and they're focusing on the breath. And we can bring into the intro of the class this idea of intention. What is it that you would like to get out of the class today? You have arrived here on your mat, sharing this space. But know that we're always in different places. So watch the breath, watch the mind. Maybe take this moment to set your intentions on what you would like to get out of the class today. And allow yourself to just be with whatever comes up throughout the practice. You are here, you have arrived. So again, maybe using that as a little piece, as an intention, or even thinking about how would you thread those first 4 sutras in a theme for the whole class. We don't have to explain to them, we're going to talk about the Yoga Sutras and we're going to look at this thing, but how can you take that concept and translate it into what's going on in the class and what might be going on for some or all of the people in the classroom. So let's take a look at the next sutra. We're going to look at ways of knowing, ways of thinking. All right, so while those first 4 sutras are really kind of like yoga in a nutshell, now we're going to get a little bit deeper. So I'm going to be talking more in groups of sutras. So we're going to look at sutras 1.5 through 1.11. And the subtitle here is Uncoloring the Thoughts. So we talked about filters. In this realm, I'm also talking about it as coloring. So filters that we're looking through, or the coloring of what's actually going on. Think about somebody who wears rose-colored glasses. So uncoloring the thoughts, there are different ways of knowing things. First one, and probably the one where we all would like to be and sometimes think we are even when we're not, is correct knowing. So that is You haven't put any of your own crap onto it. You are clearly seeing what has happened. Sometimes we can see it better when we're not in the situation. It's a little bit harder sometimes when we are involved in an interaction, but correct knowing is one of the ways of knowing. And the next way is incorrect knowing. And that's just you're seeing it through a filter. It's not actually the situation that's happening. And if hearing it, you could think like, oh, well, that just sounds crazy. That just sounds like somebody's nuts. But it's something that we all do. We all shine our own stuff. We all have our own perceptions of things. We put our own spin on situations. And if you're like me, there have been times in your life where you've kind of been like, oh, wow, I totally got that wrong. I totally thought it was this other way. So I'm using this image of one of those illusion images, and you can look at it and you can see in black, there's two faces looking at each other, or in white, there's this, goblet, chalice, cup. So there's two different ways of seeing it. And in this thought of uncoloring the thoughts, there's the correct way. One of them is the correct way. The other is the incorrect way. So just keeping that in mind as we move into some of these other ways of knowing. Another way of knowing is through fantasy and imagination. I'm a big daydreamer. I've got like my whole life kind of planned out, and I go visit that plan. And so it's not necessarily rooted in the truth or correct knowing. It's fantasy, it's imagination. Think about times when you've had conversations with someone. Maybe you had a conversation that that you didn't like the way it ended, and so like you're in your car and you're driving and you're rerunning it through and you're saying other things that you wished you would have said. There's an example of not really being in reality. I mean, this whole other person who you're creating an interaction with in your mind has no idea that that interaction is happening. They get no experience of it, so it's not really a correct way of knowing. Another is through deep, dreamless sleep. So with sleep, there are times when we're dreaming. I would put that maybe into the imagination category when we're dreaming. A lot of times things are not really fitting in that correct knowing. Sometimes they're very unrealistic. But the deep, dreamless sleep is that place where the mind is kind of shut off. And in that place, there's no correct knowing or incorrect knowing. There's no knowing at all. It's kind of like everything is stopped. And then for the last one is memory. And again, this one can go into both categories of correct and incorrect. A lot of times when we recall a memory, we sprinkle a little extra spice in there. And each time we do that, the memory gets solidified with a little bit of coloring. There are people and times where maybe nothing does get added to it. And in those times when we're not adding anything to the memory, it's just a simple fact recall, that could fit into a correct knowing. Okay, so looking at these different ways of knowing, the idea is that we want to strive for correct knowing. We want to strive to be in a place where we are fully connected to what the reality of the moment, the present moment is. All right, Sutras 112 through 116, practice and non-attachment. So the first one basically is saying there are some people who just can go there. They can drop into meditation. They can see things clearly in the moment. There are people who are just, they just have the ability. They're born with the ability to be in that space. For the rest of us, it takes practice. It takes a consistent practice. And you'll see these scales here saying, never give up, always let go. Never give up, always let go. They seem like they are different things, but when we're talking about never giving up, it is a constant practice. You're practicing in the moment when you're interacting with people to try to let go of those filters, to recognize them, to let go of the ignorance or the unawareness, and really challenge yourself to recognize your own filters that you bring. Practice through the meditation practices and the other practices that the Yoga Sutra offer in later sutras as the guidebook on how to work on it when you're not in the situation, and then you bring it into the situation and try to remove the filters. So it is this constant kind of practice. The non-attachment, always letting go, is about letting go of the results, knowing that it is a continuous practice. It doesn't end. You will have moments where you're like, whoa, I really connected in that moment. I usually tend to do this, but I didn't do it and things worked out so great. Wow. What happens is we have that experience and we go like, I did it. I'm done. I don't have to do this stuff anymore. I've finished I've crossed the finish line, but it doesn't work that way. And if you get attached into this place where you're like, I did my work. I know I'm not adding anything to it. That becomes a filter in itself. And so making sure that we're always practicing with the intention of bringing our authentic, unfiltered selves to every moment, and then always letting go of this idea that we have to get to the finish line, because we never really do. It's always a work in progress. All right, moving on, 117 and 118. I'm going to kind of gloss over these because it's a little in depth for our purposes, but I do just want to clarify that they're talking about two types of concentration. One type of concentration is about focusing very heavily into an object, and kind of everything else goes away and you're completely engrossed in this object, whether it's a physical object or an object or thought in your mind that you're holding as your point of focus. There's another kind of concentration where there's no object. And this is actually some of the later goals through the Yoga Sutras. So as you get into the later chapters that we won't be getting into in this training, it'll start to distinguish some of the differences between these and some steps in how to maybe achieve it. So moving on to 119 and 122. So this one is about staying with the practice. So those last ones that we looked at, never give up and always let go, is this idea of dedication to the practice. But that dedication can look a lot different for different people because we all have different lives. I mean, somebody who works a full-time job, has a family they're taking care of, maybe even a side business, all other kinds of things like that they're working towards, might not have a lot of time to commit to a yoga practice. So maybe that is like 5 minutes a day that they have at the end of the day to go to a quiet place and focus on the breath. On the other side, there might be somebody who has the freedom to maybe invest a couple of hours a day, and maybe they're taking yoga classes. Maybe they're getting deep into practices and taking trainings and workshops and learning about some of the deeper concepts. That could be another level of effort. But no matter what side you're on, I mean, you have the person who has 5 minutes available each day, but how much of their intention and attention are they putting into that 5 minutes? Whereas if you have someone who has several hours, they may be, practicing through some things and like stopping and checking their phone and texting or something like that. So, there's a balance here. Effort, how much focus and intention and commitment are you putting into the time that you have, and the commitment of how much time you actually have to invest. It's different for everybody. And think about the people that are walking through the door to take the class with you. That is a big part of their effort and commitment. They have committed to spending that hour with you. So how can we help them get the most out of that? All right, Sutras 123 through 129. This is about contemplation on So we've all heard the chanting. You see it written OM or AUM. We're going to look at the AUM, and then it's actually 4 parts. There's the A, the U, the M, and then the silence after the M kind of resonates out. So the idea here is that Om is a direct path. So we're going back to the idea of this clear mind, seeing things without the filters, this connection. We are the ocean, really connecting to that idea that we are all kind of a part of this thing. And all of those separate issues really just fall away. So we use all of these 8 limbs of yoga to really work on getting there. And the Yoga Sutras says, but you can go there like that with the practice of Om. And we're talking about chanting. I will clarify here that chanting is not a normal part of a yoga class in a gym setting. If you are teaching in one of the heated yoga studio settings, it's a little bit more accepted, although beware that if you have people who are brand new, never tried yoga before, and you sit them down and say, chant with me, they're going to feel uncomfortable and might not come back. So know that in this setting, it may not be as frequently used. I have seen it used, especially if somebody has regular students and they are being given the option to just listen or to join in. That's a great way of introducing it if you're interested in that. But also for your purposes, to just give it a try and see what comes up for you. So when we're thinking about chanting Om, we're thinking about it as a mantra or a prayer. And I'd like to show a little breakdown of what those sections of the word of the chant are. So as we get into the A, the ah part, there's the contemplation is on this body, being here in this moment, feeling the breath and the thoughts that you are able to see, you know, the things that are coming up. I'm hungry, you know, all of that is in ah. The next part, ooh, oh, is shifting into the unconscious mind. So maybe those thoughts that we're not so much aware of. Some people talk about biases and things like that. They're the quiet thoughts that kind of drive our reactions sometimes. As we get into the M, the M is more about the meditation. So quieting down not only the body, the breath, and the conscious thoughts, but also the unconscious thoughts, and coming into this center focus, ekagra, into this one point. As the M resonates out, there's a moment of silence, and they call this moment of silence an indescribable knowing. So it is like the place that we're looking for to go to in that yoga journey. It's a place that nobody can describe to you, and once you are able to experience it, you likely can't describe it to anyone else. So those are the 4 parts of Om, and those are what are to be contemplated as you do the chant. Like I said, it's not something that we often bring into the classes in the gym setting, in the group exercise rooms. A little bit more maybe in a dedicated yoga studio space. But again, be mindful of new students and their level of comfort. So I have another little video. This is just a few seconds long, but it is a father who has a crying baby, and he chants Om to the baby. And it is just amazing to watch the baby just calm right down. All right, so please pause the video. Just read through Sutras 123 through 129, Jessica Char's translations on what the sutras say about contemplation on Om. Then we're going to move right into distractions, obstacles. We all hit obstacles. All right, so Sutras 130 through 132, it's basically letting everyone know, like, we all are going to hit bumps in the road. We're all going to have obstacles. There are normal obstacles. If you're not hitting the obstacles, then you might not be putting the dedicated practice into it. So the obstacles can be exciting when you hit them. And there's lots of different things that can get in our way. They list 9 of them in the Yoga Sutras. In Sutra 130, it talks about physical illness, the tendency of the mind to just not work efficiently, doubt, indecision, lack of attention, laziness, in the body or the mind. Failure to regulate the desire for worldly objects. So, that'd be just like attachments, whether it's to substances or, habits that we have. Incorrect assumptions or thinking. Failing to get to, so remember we talked about letting go, always let go. Having this expectation of being somewhere, and then when you don't get there, when you think you should have gotten there by now, that this is worthless, no use trying. That's another obstacle. Instability in maintaining a level of practice. So kind of achieving something and then like getting distracted over here, and then a week later you get back to it. All of these are obstacles to this smooth journey that we are moving through in our yoga practice. You don't have to be aware of all of the different distractions. There are 4 ways that they usually will manifest. One is going to be mental or physical pain. If you're feeling those, you're likely distracted by something. Sadness or dejection is another one. If you're feeling your heart is heavy, bring your mind around to, I am stuck in a distraction. Restlessness, shakiness, anxiety is another one. And then this one is really great to bring attention to in the yoga classes: irregularities in the inhalation and exhalation of the breath. So when the breath is, noticing if the lungs are too full, or if the lungs aren't filling up enough, if we're feeling depressed, noticing if the breath is really choppy when we're trying to get into a stretch, things like that. So we can pick up on these things going on that are a lot easier to understand, and then we can recognize that it's because of some distraction. And then 132 says to prevent or to deal with these, they're going to give you a whole list of things to do. So let's take a look at that list. All right, the Yoga Sutras gives a whole bunch of different things that you can do to bring your mind back towards this calmness. I love 133. Sutra 133 is probably one of my favorites. And it's talking about our relationship with others. So this goes back into the niyamas, the yamas, where we are, how we are interacting with others, and how do we feel, like the emotions and what we put out to and what we feel about other people. So, cultivating feelings of friendliness, compassion, goodwill. And this is like, even in those moments where we're feeling like maybe someone has more than us and we don't feel like they quite deserve it, or we deserve it more. Like, can you be gracious? And can you, in your heart, feel goodwill for that person? Neutrality. I mean, sometimes people can be quite offensive, aggressive. And can we find at least a place of neutrality where we aren't seething with anger at them? Okay, so Yoga Sutras says to help clear and stabilize the mind, let yourself fall into these places when you're interacting with others. Regulating the breath using your pranayama. Concentrating on the different senses, contemplating how awesome it is to be able to smell or taste or see. Contemplating having a mind, concentration on a painless inner state of lucidness and luminosity. So if you're in a place of sadness, meditate on being in a place of contentment or happiness. Contemplating on having a mind that's free from desires. Sometimes I've used contemplation on like what it must be like to be like my guru, like what I see them not being affected by things and like, what would what must that be like? Focusing on the nature of the state of dreamless sleep. And then Sutra 139 says, or contemplate or concentrate on whatever brings your mind to stability and tranquility. So, anything that helps you bring back to this place of calming, stabilizing. Okay, so this section could really apply to challenges. We're talking about ways that people can be distracted. And so let's say we're going to get up into a one-legged balance pose. And I'll just demonstrate with a tree pose. And you can join me with this and feel like stretching your legs a little bit. So we're moving along. We're getting into the stability poses. So we have everybody up. They find their placement for the foot. And we can ask them to start bringing their awareness into their thoughts. So if you start seeing this, right? Bringing people back to listening to your thoughts. We oftentimes can get discouraged if we're not finding success. So listen to your thoughts as you are rooting into the foot, maybe noticing how the sole of the foot is shifting side to side. Switching over to the other side, maybe notice that one side has more or less stability, balance. Just take a note. Remind yourself that you are here today showing up for your practice. Watching the breath, take the next inhale, root it down through the foot. And on the exhale, feel the exhale, reaching out through the crown of the head, reaching towards the sky. Using our breath to find stability, to clear the mind. And coming back to that mountain pose, rerooting back into both feet, stability of the mountain. Cool. So the rest of the sutras are going to talk about what happens when we are able to access this clear and stable mind. All right, bringing us back into this idea of one-pointedness. So if you're looking at this screen, you'll notice if you look around all the little circles, it'll appear as if the circles are moving in different directions. And it is not actually moving. You can pause the video and see for yourself that this is just an optical illusion. And as the mind is busy and we're darting around and we're looking and catching, I see movement, look at it, and then other places are moving. That is that vikshipta mind, the distracted mind. Now we're going to bring it into one-pointedness. Let your eyes settle into one of the little black dots. as you let yourself focus completely on that spot, just notice how the image stops moving. This is the stillness that we're striving to create through our yoga practice and through the meditation. All right, so sutras 140 through 151 are saying after we've stabilized the mind, we do this regularly, we never give up, we always let go of the fruits of the labor. And it attempts to try to explain what that state is like once we get into this calm, stabilized state of mind. All right, so 140 says the mind develops the power to become stable. So once we reach it, we know how to get there. We keep practicing. Then the mind starts to be able to go there so much easier. So we get this power to just go there when we need. The mind becomes like a transparent crystal. If you hold a crystal up, a clear crystal up, you'll see that it reflects all things around it. No filters, not adding anything to it. All those things come into the crystal. All things are reflected truly as they are in this one point, and that is what the mind can become. Sutras 142 through 146, I'm going to just skip over those. Those are just a little bit deeper about types of engrossment, which if you do a 200-hour training and you go through all 4 chapters of the sutra, there'll be a lot more information about breaking down into those things. But for our purposes, moving on to Sutra 147, with proficiency, with this ability to just keep revisiting the stable mind, there's a new level of understanding that's developed. This level of understanding or knowledge that's gained here is filled with truth. And it's different than facts in a book or clearly seeing a situation and not putting your filters on them. The truth, the knowledge here is different. And it's the knowledge that helps us break free from karma. And we're always building karma, so we're always practicing this, always or never giving up, always letting go. We're always practicing getting to this place because it gets easier and easier as we keep doing it. And life is always generating karma. We're always going to get situations that are going to create this concept of karma. And so we use this practice to help release some of that. And in the Hindu religion, where yoga originates, that building of karma goes through lifetimes, and the release of it takes lifetimes as well. Then Sutra 151 says we can recede into that objectless concentration that we just briefly touched on in Sutra 118. So there's the object focused, the objectless, which is a whole other realm, which you can enjoy exploring if you are ever interested in diving deeper into the Yoga Sutras. For the purposes of our training, it's about letting your students recognize the benefits of their hard work. Okay, so little tidbits there. Please read through all of Desikachar's Yoga Sutras. think about any of those that might resonate with you, and how could you put them into a theme? Just a slight acknowledgement. You know, people show up, they might be showing up for one thing. And we talked about this at the beginning. It might just be for a physical practice, or maybe, you know, their doctor said, you need to chill out, go take a yoga class, right? But we can sprinkle a little bit more that helps them feel some of the different connections. I mean, what we think about ourselves sometimes is not so nice. And so bringing that awareness to it and encouraging people to not only talk nicer to themselves, but acknowledge the work they put into it, and acknowledge that all of us struggle. All of us are in this together, and we get to use that time to tap into that connection. So how would you invite your students in this concept of the Yoga Sutras and how it might apply to a practice? So we will spend some time discussing it in our group meet, but the assignment is going to be creating an 8 to 10 minute themed class. I really like it if you'd stay a little closer to the 8-minute mark. But making sure that the class is offering some of the yoga philosophy themes. So I shared some ideas with the Yoga Sutras. You can also take them wherever you would like to in your demonstration. You also have the option to do the yamas or the niyamas, the first and second limb of the Yoga Sutras. You can do it as a chakra-based theme, or any of the 8 limbs, if you feel like that is a theme that can bring the philosophy into the sequence. There is the class plan template. So that has been shared with you. And there is a tab at the bottom for you to be able to put in your sequence for the Yoga Sutra demonstration. You're welcome to do that as a practice, because that will help prepare you for the final assignment, your final project. But please feel free to use that. It'll help you kind of organize the thoughts, practice it so that you know how long it's going to take. Timeliness is an important component of teaching classes anywhere, but even in the gym setting, because there's a lot of transition, there's lots of different energies coming in and out of the same room. We want to honor the people that are in our energy and our space of our class, but we also want to honor the energy of maybe the people who are waiting to come in and do their class. So I'm going to be holding you to the 10-minute time frame. So I will be calling a class at that 10-minute mark. So be mindful of practicing and making sure that you are staying within that time frame. Looking forward to seeing everybody's sequences, your thoughts on how to offer concept of the Yoga Sutras or yoga philosophy to students, and have a wonderful rest of your day.